I remember that busy Thursday afternoon like it was yesterday. I'm Alice Brown, a tough-as-nails woman juggling my job as a cashier at the local supermarket while taking care of my family. Despite the visible exhaustion etched on my face, my smile never wavered. It was my armor, my strength. I may have been small in stature, but my spirit? Oh, it was as big as the Montana sky. As I rushed home through the bustling streets, the aroma of baked beans and homemade pancakes I'd prepared earlier wafted through the air when I opened the door. My dear husband Dennis, bless his heart, was warming up the meal for dinner. He had the kindest smile and the biggest heart, and even though his chronic back problems kept him from working, he always tried to help around the house to ease my load. Dennis greeted me with a gentle kiss, asking how my day had been. I replied it was busy as usual, hanging up my apron with a sigh. Just then, our 10-year-old son Justin came bounding into the kitchen, eyes shining, clutching a science book. He was bursting to share what he'd learned about stars that day. I told him how I didn't have many opportunities to study when I was young, and how I wanted him to make the most of every chance to learn and build a better future. I didn't mind working long hours if it meant giving him those opportunities. Justin nodded, promising to do his best to improve our family's life. As I washed the dinner dishes, a nagging thought wouldn't leave my mind. Watching Justin absorbed in his book, I felt a mixture of pride and worry. He's so smart, I thought. He deserves a high-quality education. But how could we provide that with our financial situation? After tucking Justin into bed, I sat next to Dennis in the living room. Dennis, I began hesitantly, I've been thinking. What if I tried for a janitor job at that private school? Maybe I could negotiate a scholarship for Justin in exchange for my work. I saw they were looking for cleaners. Dennis looked surprised and a bit concerned, asking about my supermarket job. I explained I talked to my boss about working part-time, and though it meant less income, I thought I could make up the difference by selling tarts on weekends. Dennis expressed his worry about the added burden on me, but I just smiled, feeling a surge of determination. I know it'll be tough, honey, I said, squeezing Dennis's hand, but when I think about Justin's future, it's worth it. I want to give him the chances we never had. He's so bright, and I just know he has a brilliant future ahead of him. Dennis's eyes softened as he held my hand, telling me what a wonderful mother I was and assuring me we'd do whatever it took for our son. That night, as I lay in bed, my mind was a whirlwind of concerns and hopes. I knew the coming months would be challenging, but I was ready to move mountains for Justin. I'll never forget the day I finally got to share the good news. After a long, anxiety-filled day, I burst through the door with a triumphant smile. Dennis, you won't believe it. I exclaimed, barely containing my excitement. I got the job at the school. Justin's going to get a scholarship. Dennis, trying to ease his back pain on the sofa, smiled with relief. Justin's eyes lit up when he heard the news, asking if he was really going to study at the private school. As he rushed to hug me, I felt a wave of joy and relief wash over me. I stroked his hair, telling him he was going to get the education he deserved. The years that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I juggled my part-time job at the supermarket, cleaning at the school, and selling tarts on weekends. Despite the growing exhaustion, my determination never wavered. But as I pushed myself harder, I noticed Dennis struggling more with even simple tasks. Sometimes, I'd catch glimpses of him quietly wincing in pain. Time flew by for our family, bringing pride but also unexpected challenges and heartache. We faced a devastating loss when Dennis, our loving father and devoted husband, passed away due to complications related to his chronic health issues. His death left a gaping hole in our lives, affecting Justin and me in different ways. Justin, once our curious and energetic boy, had grown into a young man who'd graduated high school and college with honors. The high-quality education I'd worked so hard for had paid off, but it also brought unintended consequences. Over time, the private school environment and influence of wealthy social circles began to shape Justin's character in unexpected ways. The humble, grateful young man slowly transformed into someone more self-centered and materialistic. He was proud of his academic achievements, but somewhere along the line, he began to feel ashamed of our modest lifestyle. I remember that Saturday afternoon like it was yesterday, the smell of baking tarts filling our modest kitchen. Justin walked into the living room, his face a mix of frustration and discontent. I knew in my heart that the moment I'd been dreading had finally arrived. I had noticed changes in Justin. My previously open-minded son had now become distant and frequently avoided spending time with the family. On several occasions, I had overheard him on the phone, sounding as if he was afraid of being judged by his friends. Wiping my hands on my apron, I hesitantly asked Justin if we could talk. He stopped, looking at me with a hint of impatience. My voice trembled as I asked him if he was ashamed of our way of life. Justin's brow furrowed, clearly uncomfortable with my direct question. He quickly denied it, but his tone was defensive. As he continued, avoiding my eyes, my heart sank. He talked about wanting a different future, saying he wasn't born to live like this forever. His words cut deep, like a knife through my chest. I reminded him that everything I'd done was for him, to give him a better future. Justin sighed, showing his frustration as he spoke about wanting to escape this world. He was tired of selling tarts and cleaning floors, saying his friends thought it didn't suit him. The silence that followed was deafening, and I felt the pain of realizing how much my son had changed. I wondered where I'd lost the connection with the child I'd raised with so much love. Then, one Sunday afternoon, Justin surprised me by bringing a friend home for the first time. I felt a glimmer of hope, thinking maybe this was a sign he was starting to accept our life and me. Justin's friend Peter was the son of a wealthy, influential man. I noticed Peter looking around our humble home with barely concealed disdain, but I chose to ignore it out of respect for my son. As they sat in the living room, discussing plans to start a business together, I couldn't help but overhear. Justin was explaining, excitement mixed with nervousness in his voice, that they had a solid idea but needed funds to invest. In the kitchen, my heart swelling with a mixture of pride and worry as I overheard Justin discussing his business plans. I wanted to support his dreams, but I feared the financial pressure it might bring. When Justin mentioned the lack of investment funds, I made an impulsive but well-intentioned decision. I entered the living room, my voice shaking slightly as I offered to help by taking out a loan from the bank. I explained that I'd always paid my bills on time and could use the house as collateral. Justin's surprised look, tinged with a hint of guilt, is still etched in my memory. He asked if I would really do that for him, and I nodded, my face set with determination. I told him I'd do anything to make his dreams come true. Peter seemed impressed, though his air of superiority remained. He remarked on how lucky Justin was to have a mother like me. With hope and determination, I went to the bank, worried but trusting my son as I took out the loan. I handed the money to Justin, and their real estate business started modestly but quickly took off. By the second year, they were known throughout the city for their innovation and success in the real estate industry. Watching from afar, I felt an immense pride in my son. However, contrary to my expectations, success and wealth changed Justin in ways I never imagined. He became increasingly cold and self-centered, living a lavish lifestyle with frequent visits to expensive restaurants and flashy parties. His attitude towards me grew colder, sometimes even disrespectful. I tried to understand my son's changes, remembering the child he once was, full of dreams and simple values. Now he seemed like a completely different person. One evening, during dinner, I brought up the topic of the loan. I asked Justin, in a gentle but firm voice, if he could start repaying the loan I'd taken out to help start the company. Justin's cold response, without even looking at me, felt like a knife to my heart. He said it was my problem and that he had his own plans now, including going abroad soon to expand the business. Tears welled up in my eyes as I reminded him that I'd done this for him, for his future. Justin stood up indifferently, saying he hadn't asked for it and that it was what I wanted to do. He left for his flight, leaving me alone with a broken heart and a mountain of debt. As I looked around the quiet house, reflecting on the years of hard work and sacrifice, I couldn't help but wonder where I'd gone wrong.
In the opulent interior of a private jet, Justin and Peter were toasting with champagne. Their laughter echoed in the enclosed space. The blue sky outside was merely a backdrop to their grand plans and unbridled ambition. Peter raised his glass, declaring this was just the beginning. He boasted that the world was theirs for the taking. Justin smiled, his eyes gleaming with a thirst for success. He agreed, stating there were no limits for them now, and that the future was where the real game lay. Peter chuckled, asking if Justin wasn't worried about leaving his mother behind. Justin shrugged nonchalantly, saying she'd be fine as she always managed. He added that she must be proud of her son's success. Peter reinforced Justin's thoughts, telling him he deserved everything. He emphasized that Justin owed nothing to anyone after studying and working hard. Justin agreed wholeheartedly, grinning widely. He declared that their upcoming overseas investment would make them unstoppable. Justin boasted about the money, parties, and luxurious lifestyle that awaited them. Peter proposed another toast to their limitless life and a future without regrets. As the plane continued its course, Justin contemplated his new life of wealth and success. Thoughts of his mother Alice and all she had done for him seemed like distant notes of a melody he no longer wished to hear. He was completely immersed in his new self. Justin had become a man who valued material worth over emotions and prioritized success over relationships.
As I wandered through my quiet house, memories of Dennis and Justin flooded back, their laughter echoing in my mind. Dennis's death had already left a gaping wound, but Justin's departure had deepened it beyond measure. I found myself tracing the contours of their beloved faces in the photos in the living room, whispering, "Why, Justin? Why did you forget everything we did for you?" My vision blurred with tears as the weight of the loan debt pressed heavily on my shoulders. One morning, I summoned all my courage and headed to the supermarket where I'd worked for years. Memories washed over me as I entered, but I steeled myself and approached Mr. Lopez, my voice trembling but determined. I asked if there were any job openings, explaining that I desperately needed work. Mr. Lopez, a kind-eyed middle-aged man, looked at me with a mixture of surprise and sympathy. He assured me there was always a place for me, calling me one of the best employees they'd ever had. Relief flooded through me as I thanked him, promising to do anything they needed. Back home, I decided to restart my cake and tart sales. I spent my nights creating recipes, baking Dennis's favorite cake every evening. Each cake was a memory, each tart a story. I'd talk to Dennis's photo, asking if he was proud of me, seeking some kind of response. Days melted into a routine of supermarket work and nighttime baking. Exhausted but determined, I knew I needed to stay strong to face the debt and my son's betrayal. "I've overcome so much," I'd tell myself, "I can overcome this too." On lonely nights, I allowed myself to feel the full extent of my heartache and disappointment. "Justin," I'd whisper into the empty house, "I gave you everything. All the love any child should receive. And you left me with nothing but debt and memories." The next day, as I worked the register at the supermarket, a young man in worn clothes approached with just a loaf of bread. As I rang it up, it became clear he didn't have enough money to pay. He began to return the bread, his face a mix of embarrassment and despair. Without hesitation, I made a quick decision. I opened my own wallet, took out the difference, and told him it was enough. The young man looked at me, and with tears in his eyes, he said, "Thank you so much. I don't know how to thank you. This is the only meal I'll have for days. You wouldn't understand how much I appreciate it." I smiled kindly, and felt a little warm from his gratitude. "Don't worry. We all need help sometimes. All we need is food." The young man still couldn't believe his eyes and said, "Thank you so much." That night, I was walking home through the quiet streets after an exhausting day at work. My mind was still on that poor young man I'd helped in the morning, his grateful face when I paid for the bread he couldn't afford etched in my memory. As I turned the corner, I stopped in my tracks at the sight before me. There he was, the same young man, sitting alone on the sidewalk, bathed in the faint light of a candle. His eyes were closed, hands clasped in silent prayer. Next to him lay a worn-out bag and the now open bread package. My heart ached at the scene. Watching him start to eat his meager meal, I sat down on the sidewalk, keeping a respectful distance, and introduced myself. I asked him, with genuine concern, how he'd ended up in this situation. The young man, after a moment of hesitation, began to share his story, and it shook me to my core. He introduced himself as Levi, telling me it was his 19th birthday. His voice was heavy with sadness as he explained how his mother had kicked him out when he was still just a child. He spoke of a mother who hadn't wanted him, who had always been harsh, and a father he'd never known. As he continued, I felt a lump form in my throat. He told me how he'd chosen the dangerous streets over staying at home, pride creeping into his voice as he said he'd learned a lot on the streets. Every day, he'd go to the library, thirsting for knowledge that school, a luxury beyond his reach, couldn't provide. He explained how he made a living collecting recyclables, but despite his efforts, no one would give him a chance. Tears welled up in my eyes, not just for this young man's sad tale, but because it made me think of Justin, who had left. My voice trembled as I wished him a happy birthday, telling him I couldn't imagine a mother doing that to her son. I found myself saying that although my own son had left, I'd never abandoned him like that. As I sat there next to this young man, I felt a sudden impulse. I was looking into Levi's eyes and offered him a place to stay. My heart was filled with a mix of emotions, compassion, hope, and a touch of fear. "If you'd like," I said, my voice gentle but firm, "you can stay at my house for a few days. It's not much, but for those who keep God in their hearts, it's enough." I smiled warmly, showing him genuine kindness as I continued, explaining how he could help with some housework, maybe wash dishes while I baked tarts to sell. It wasn't much, but it was what I could offer. Levi's face was a canvas of surprise and emotion. I found myself opening up, telling him about Justin's clothes still in the house, how my son had left the country without them. My voice was steady, but I couldn't hide the tinge of sadness as I spoke about all I'd done for Justin, only for him to choose his own path and leave me alone. Levi was grateful but hesitant, saying he couldn't impose a trouble. I assured him it wasn't an imposition at all. In fact, I told him it would be nice to have someone around. I looked at him with a welcoming expression, asking, "What do you say?" After a moment's hesitation, Levi accepted, his eyes a mixture of fear and hope. He said he felt he could trust me, and that the streets were cold and dangerous at night. As we walked to my house, I felt a strange sense of purpose I hadn't experienced in a long time. At home, I showed Levi to Justin's room, telling him he could use my son's clothes since Justin wouldn't be coming back. I pointed out the bathroom, watching as Levi walked towards the door next to the room. The room was tidy but had an air of absence, as if waiting for someone who would never return. I prepared a simple but loving dinner, calling Levi to eat. As we sat at the table, I could see the disbelief on his face, realizing how different his situation was just hours ago. Levi commented on how long it had been since he'd had such a delicious meal, a small smile playing on his lips. During dinner, we talked about life. I found myself sharing everything about Justin, how he'd gone to another country and left me behind, despite all I'd done for him. Now Justin was wealthy, while I still lived modestly. The young man listened to the story in disbelief. "I'll help you at home in any way I can," he promised with determination. As the days passed, I devoted myself to teaching Levi the art of tart making. I remember those days so vividly. One morning, as we prepared the dough, I told him the secret was in feeling the texture, not just following a recipe. Levi's smile as he kneaded the dough warmed my heart. He said he was beginning to understand that it was more art than science. While I was at the market, Levi would study baking books and take online classes. I'll never forget coming home one afternoon to find him experimenting with a new cake recipe. He looked so nervous, telling me he was trying something different. I encouraged him, saying that's how we learn. As the days passed, Levi's cakes improved, each one tastier and more beautiful than the last. The pride in his eyes when he showed me a beautifully decorated cake is something I'll always cherish. I told him he had a natural talent, remembering how Justin had never shown interest in cooking. Watching Levi's effort and growth filled me with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. One day, as we watched a cake rise in the oven, I complimented his skill. Levi's eyes sparkled as he said he was just following in my footsteps. Our time in the kitchen strengthened our bond. One evening over dinner, I confessed to Levi how much joy his presence brought me, like having a new family. His emotional response, saying I'd given him not just a home but a family, touched me deeply. After mastering cake making, Levi decided to take a brave step. He started offering his creations to people on the streets, choosing busy areas to increase his chances of sales. As he prepared his cakes one morning, I suggested he take contact cards so people could reach us for orders. Levi nodded enthusiastically. "That's a great idea, Alice. I'll do it right away today." The orders started to come in one after another, and Levi was really dedicated to it. Every day he came home with news. "Alice, you won't believe it. We've got 5 more orders today," he said with a shining smile on his face. Seeing the success of the cakes and tarts, I started to reevaluate my routine. One evening, while talking in the kitchen, I shared my idea with Levi. "Levi, I'm thinking of quitting my job at the market. Our tarts are becoming more famous and I want to focus more on them." Levi looked at me with surprise and joy. "That's great, Alice. We can do more and more together." So I decided to quit my job at the market and focus on making cakes and tarts with Levi. The cake business that started as my side job continued to grow steadily. With Levi's help, it became a source of income that I never expected. As the demand for tarts and cakes increased, I realized that what was once a small home project was becoming a full-fledged business. The kitchen was filled with the sweet aroma of freshly baked tarts and cakes, a scent that had become our signature. Levi stood beside me, his hands dusted with flour, eyes shining with excitement as we discussed our growing success. I told him we needed to think about expansion, my voice trembling slightly with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Levi, ever enthusiastic, agreed wholeheartedly, mentioning we needed more space. As our sales steadily increased, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I could finally start repaying the loan I'd taken out years ago. Each payment felt like a step closer to our dreams, and I couldn't help but smile with relief. After careful consideration, we decided to rent a small space in town suitable for larger-scale production. As I signed the lease, I turned to Levi and told him none of this would have been possible without him. His strength and dedication had taught me that I didn't have to do everything alone, and that there were still people worth helping. Our new space was modest but well equipped, allowing us to increase production and expand our product range. Levi's eyes welled up with tears as he expressed his gratitude. He said it felt like a dream, that I had cared for him like a mother he'd never had, taught him everything about the business, and given him a chance to become a real man. His words touched me deeply. I saw in Levi a gratitude that Justin had never shown. As we stood in our new bakery, surrounded by the tools of our trade and the promise of a brighter future, I felt a sense of fulfillment I hadn't experienced in years. This journey with Levi had not only saved him but had also given me a new purpose in life. Our little bakery had become something much bigger than I'd ever dreamed. What started in my humble kitchen had grown into one of the most famous pastry shops in the city, with over 20 locations across the country. The change wasn't just in our business, it touched our personal lives too. My once modest home had transformed into a grand residence, its beauty and elegance enhancing the entire street. Next door stood Levi's house, a symbol of his gratitude and success. Our relationship had deepened over the years, evolving into something akin to a true mother and son bond. I'll never forget the day Levi told me he'd never leave me, that everything he had was because of me. His words warmed my heart in a way I hadn't felt since Justin left. With employees managing various stores, I finally found myself enjoying a calmer, happier life. Though still busy, I felt a sense of fulfillment, knowing that my years of dedication and love for baking had borne fruit in the most satisfying way. It all started with us making tarts in our kitchen, I mused one day, a wave of nostalgia washing over me. While reviewing business plans, I turned to Levi with a smile and asked if I had changed his life as much as he had changed mine. The gratitude in his eyes as he answered nearly brought me to tears. He said I had done more than change his life, I had given him a family, a purpose, and a home.
On the other side of the world, in a luxurious office, Justin, Alice's son, sat in a leather chair, lost in thought. After years away from his mother, he wondered how she was doing. Is she still alive? He mused, gazing absently at the city skyline through the window. Despite being surrounded by wealth, there was an unfillable void in his heart. His life was a carousel of parties and drinks, a directionless quest for meaning. He had never built a family, and those around him were merely business partners, not true friends. No genuine affection or deep bonds had formed. Justin lived in a lavish apartment with panoramic city views, adorned with expensive artwork and designer furniture. The space was impressive but cold and impersonal. Sitting in his office, he remembered the modest home of his youth, where his mother would bake tarts in the kitchen, their sweet aroma wafting through the house. Justin tried not to dwell on thoughts of his mother or the past, attempting to avoid complete regret. He wondered why he had never even called to check on her, but quickly dismissed the thought. "She's probably fine," he reassured himself. That afternoon, an unpleasant surprise awaited him at a gas station. When he tried to pay for fuel, his card transaction was declined. "Must be some mistake," Justin muttered with a dismissive smirk. Unfazed, he pulled out cash from his wallet and paid. Back home, Justin immediately called the bank to check on the situation, thinking, it must be just a misunderstanding. When the operator answered, he hurriedly began explaining about the problem with his card at the gas station. After verifying the information, the operator delivered unexpected news. Justin's card and bank accounts were blocked. Confused, Justin insisted it must be a mistake and asked them to check again. As he was still on the phone, bewildered, a loud knock came at the door. "Just a moment," he said into the phone, going to answer the door. As Justin opened the door, he found a judicial officer standing there. The officer asked if he was Justin and handed him some documents, saying he needed to review them. Justin took the papers, staring at them in disbelief. The printed words indicated that all the companies he had built over years now belonged to Peter Sanchez, his friend and partner. This must be a bad joke, Justin thought, laughing nervously. The judicial officer sternly replied that this was no joke and advised Justin to treat it as a very serious matter. Trembling with tension and anger, Justin reached for his phone to call Peter, telling himself Peter would explain everything. However, Peter didn't answer the call, increasing Justin's anxiety. Seeing Justin's growing distress, the officer intervened, telling him he needed to vacate the office and apartment within 7 days. Justin shook his head, feeling the weight of reality, and muttered, 7 days. As he looked around his luxurious office, he felt the reality of the situation slowly sinking in. He questioned how this could have happened, feeling betrayed and abandoned, eerily similar to how he had left his mother years ago. Caught in a whirlwind of emotions, Justin sped towards Peter's mansion. His heart was racing, filled with anxiety and hope that this was all just a cruel joke. He parked haphazardly in front of the luxurious mansion, jumped out of the car, and pounded on the door. Peter opened the door, looking surprised and irritated at the unexpected visit. Justin, trembling with anger, shouted at Peter, accusing him of being crazy and insisting this must be some kind of joke. Peter maintained an irritated calmness, walking to the lavishly decorated living room sofa and elegantly sitting down with a glass of red wine. He told Justin with a sardonic smile that this was no joke and that Justin had indeed transferred his share of the company to him. Justin approached, shaking with disbelief, and cried out in a voice filled with despair and distrust, asking how Peter could do this when they were partners and friends. Peter shrugged, taking a sip of wine with an indifferent expression. He told Justin he had always been self-centered and careless, never reading the documents Peter gave him. Peter explained it was only a matter of time before someone took advantage of that, and he had done so. He advised Justin to grow up and be a man. Justin felt as if the ground was crumbling beneath his feet. He asked Peter, his voice overwhelmed with emotion, why he was destroying his life. Peter coldly stared at Justin and said he would give him some money to go home, calling it mercy. He declared Justin was finished here. Justin left Peter's mansion in a state of shock, unable to believe his friend and partner's betrayal and the loss of his company. He felt as if he were in a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Returning home, Justin was completely enveloped in feelings of defeat and disbelief. He was devastated by Peter's betrayal and the shock of losing everything he had built. The only money left was the amount Peter had given him out of pity and a small sum he had kept in his safe. As Justin walked around his luxurious apartment, he felt strangely uncomfortable. He questioned how this could have happened, recalling the life he thought was secure. In the whirlwind of emotions, the only thought that came to him was returning to his mother's home. Justin wondered if his mother would accept him, overwhelmed by a wave of regret. Memories of his mother and the simple, happy moments in the kitchen making tarts began to surface in his mind. He felt a deepening sense of regret that he should have cherished those moments more. Having made up his mind, Justin began packing his bags. He felt the need to face his past, apologize, and rebuild his life. With his bags packed and a determination to make amends for past mistakes and start a new life, he set off for his distant hometown. Justin arrived in his mother's town with a heavy heart, filled with anxiety and regret. As he drove through the streets of his childhood, he couldn't believe the sight before him. Where his mother's modest house once stood, An elegant mansion now towered. The change was so dramatic that Justin struggled to recognize the place. He parked in front of the mansion, staring at the grand structure with a mix of disbelief and fear. Justin wondered if his mother had sold the house, or worse, as he approached the mansion's door hesitantly. His heart was pounding, and childhood memories flashed through his mind like a movie. Standing before the door, Justin took a moment to catch his breath. He remembered leaving home without saying goodbye, and the nights his mother must have waited for a call or visit. With a trembling hand, he finally rang the doorbell. As he waited, Justin examined the details of the mansion, questioning how this had happened. The door opened, and to his surprise, Alice appeared. She had aged, but was still the kind woman Justin remembered. For a moment, Justin was speechless, his face etched with shock and surprise.
"Justin?" I said, my voice trembling with disbelief. "Is it really you?" He just nodded, tears welling up in his eyes, unable to speak in that moment. I felt a whirlwind of emotions, shock, joy, and a touch of pain from old wounds. Levi, bless his heart, came rushing to see what was happening. I was still in shock, unable to process that my son had returned after so many years. Despite all the hurt and resentment I'd carried, a mother's love won out. I embraced Justin tightly, pouring years of pent-up emotions into that hug. "Come in," I said, my voice shaking as I invited him into our home. As we sat in the living room, Justin began to tell his story of betrayal and downfall. I could see the confusion in his eyes as he looked around, asking how I'd acquired such a grand house. It dawned on me then that he hadn't returned out of true remorse, but out of necessity. Still, I decided to share how I'd turned my life around. I told him about the loneliness after he left, and how Levi had entered my life. Together, we turned my little tart-making passion into a real business. I could see the regret filling Justin's eyes as I spoke. He interrupted me for a moment, saying he should have been there. I continued, explaining how our tarts and cakes became famous, leading to one store, then another, until we had a chain. Justin listened intently, the weight of his past decisions visibly heavy on him. He expressed disbelief at how much he'd missed, how long he'd been away. As I looked at my son, my heart was a mix of sadness and love. I looked him in the eyes and said, "Life is a series of choices, Justin. I've made my choices, you've made yours. What matters is what we do together now." I could see the understanding dawn on his face, the realization of how much he had to apologize for and learn. When Justin expressed his eagerness to help with the company, his eyes shining with enthusiasm, I felt a mix of emotions. I replied with a calm and resolute attitude, born from years of experience. I explained to him, looking straight into his eyes, that the company Levi and I built was the result of much effort and sweat. It wasn't an easy journey, I told him. I made it clear that I was no longer the passive mother I once was. His abandonment had taught me a lot, and circumstances had changed. I remember the surprise on Justin's face when I told him he'd have to start from the bottom if he truly wanted to work with us. He needed to understand the business from the ground up, just like Levi had. Justin's response, reflecting a newfound humility, touched me. After a pause, I told him he would start as a cake delivery person. I could see the surprise and slight discomfort on his face, but also the recognition that it was a fair starting point. Over the next few months, I watched Justin work as a delivery person, learning the ins and outs of the role. He learned about routes and the importance of making all deliveries carefully and on time. Then he moved on to helping with cake production, gaining a new appreciation for the hands-on work and dedication required. I remember telling him, "You need to learn how to choose ingredients to create quality products." Justin embraced each new challenge, learning about ingredient selection, negotiating with suppliers, and inventory management. I made sure Justin experienced all the most basic positions in the company for several months. It's important to understand every aspect of the business, I explained to him. These are lessons you didn't learn when you were younger. Through this process, I saw Justin begin to understand the value of hard work and the importance of the people who contribute to the company's success. As the years passed, Justin's transformation was evident. I noticed that Justin had really changed, not just as a professional, but as a person too. Watching him grow filled me with a joy I hadn't felt in years. He worked tirelessly in every position at the company, never complaining, always eager to learn and improve. The way he absorbed Levi's teachings with respect and attentiveness, showing a humility I'd never seen before, touched my heart. One day, I couldn't help but express my pride, telling him he'd become the person I'd always hoped he would be. His response, filled with deep gratitude, brought tears to my eyes. He thanked Levi and me for teaching him the true value of work and family. As I reflected on all we had accomplished together, I felt I could finally rest a little after years of struggle. I had rebuilt my life and business from scratch, and most importantly, regained my relationship with my son. Having Justin back in the company and in my life gave me a new joy and fulfillment I hadn't felt in a long time. I told him, my eyes shining, that I had always believed there was something good in him, it just needed to be found. When Justin thanked me, his voice trembling with emotion, I felt a warmth spread through my chest. He spoke of seeing the storms I had weathered alone, the battles I had fought when he wasn't there. His words about my strength and unconditional love teaching him the true meaning of life and family moved me deeply. As he expressed how grateful he was that I never gave up on him or my dreams, I felt a sense of completion. Justin said I had taught him the most important lesson, that it's never too late to change, to love, and to redeem oneself. When he called the time we now spent together a blessing he didn't deserve, but that I gave freely, I couldn't hold back my tears. I gripped his hand tightly, feeling a surge of pride and deep love. In that moment, all the past struggles and trials transformed into a blessing of unbreakable love between mother and son.
If you enjoyed this heartwarming tale, please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support is what keeps us motivated to share these touching stories almost every day. Stay tuned for our next amazing story. You won't want to miss it. We truly appreciate your support, dear viewers. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.